This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to the briefing. We are covering the latest security footage from the Capitol, a major legislative breakthrough on the shutdown, and shifting political landscapes in Maine and Louisiana. Let's get started.
Prosecutors released video of the correspondents' dinner attack.
New footage shows a gunman charging security in seconds.
President Trump signed a bill ending the record shutdown.
Trump removes whiskey tariffs following the king's visit.
Governor Janet Mills suspends her Maine Senate campaign.
A new Surgeon General nominee replaces Casey Means.
Louisiana suspends House primaries after a court ruling.
Congress reopens the Department of Homeland Security today.
Starting with the security footage. Federal prosecutors have just released a chilling 6-minute video that captures the moment a man tried to storm the White House Correspondents' Association dinner. The footage, shared by U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, shows Cole Thomas Allen running through security at the Washington Hilton with a long gun. This release comes as investigators work to clarify exactly what happened during the chaotic melee. While it was previously known that a Secret Service agent was struck in his bullet-resistant vest, Pirro emphasized today that there is no evidence the officer was hit by friendly fire. The video shows Allen pointing his weapon at the agent, who then fired back 5 times. It is a stark look at how close the suspect got to a room filled with the nation's highest-ranking officials and journalists.
The footage also provides a look at Allen's movements before the actual attack. He is seen walking through the hotel hallways the day before, even checking out the gym, which suggests a level of premeditation. On the night of the event, the video shows about a dozen federal officers standing near the magnetometers, when Allen suddenly emerges from a doorway and sprints toward them. Secret Service Director Sean Curran has defended the security plan, noting that the attack was stopped at the outermost perimeter of a multi-layered bubble. He pointed out that Allen was still over 300 feet away from the podium where President Trump was seated. Despite the breach, Curran insists the site was set up perfectly. Allen remains in custody, without bail as he awaits his trial for the attempted assassination.
Looking closer at the timing, new details from the CCTV footage reveal just how fast this incident unfolded. Cole Thomas Allen managed to burst through the security checkpoint in only 4 seconds. The high-quality version of the clip shows Allen wearing a long dark coat initially, which he then shed to reveal a 12-gauge shotgun. Prosecutors allege he was also carrying a semi-automatic handgun and 3 knives as he ran through the terrace level of the hotel. This was just 1 floor above the basement ballroom where President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance were located. The speed of the charge is what stands out most in this new evidence. It shows a security agent opening fire toward the sprinting suspect, though the video doesn't clearly show if Allen managed to discharge his own weapon before he was eventually tackled and arrested by the authorities.
The Justice Department says this footage confirms Allen was casing the area the day before the dinner, after checking in as a guest. While the video doesn't show the final moment of the arrest, it highlights the immediate danger posed to the attendees. When the gunfire rang out, the president and other cabinet members had to be rushed from the venue. A Secret Service spokesman confirmed that while an officer was struck in his ballistic vest, he was not seriously injured. This higher-quality footage, which was posted on social media by Jeanine Pirro, is now a central piece of evidence in the assassination attempt case. It really underscores the vulnerability of these high-profile events. Even with a heavy security presence, when a motivated individual decides to strike with such sudden and violent speed.
Now to the government shutdown. President Trump has officially signed a spending bill that ends the record-breaking 76-day partial government shutdown. This impasse had caused significant chaos at airports across the country and left thousands of federal workers without pay for weeks. The House of Representatives finally approved the Senate-passed bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees everything from airport security to immigration enforcement. However, the new law is a compromise that doesn't include specific funds for immigration and customs enforcement or certain parts of Customs and Border Protection. Those agencies were at the heart of the political feud, as Democrats refused to fund them without major reforms following recent deadly shootings involving federal officers. While the department is now technically open, the debate over immigration enforcement funding is far from over, as a separate bill is still being considered.
The shutdown's end comes just in time. as the administration had warned that emergency funds were set to run out later this week. The urgency to reach a deal intensified after the attempted assassination at the Correspondents' Dinner, which highlighted the critical need for consistent funding for presidential and airport security. Before this bill passed, TSA agents were working without pay, and wait times at major travel hubs had stretched for hours. While Trump had previously signed an executive order to ensure some agents got paid, the broader Department of Homeland Security had been operating without routine funds since mid-February. This new funding ensures that security officers at checkpoints can finally receive their paychecks on time. It is a major relief for the travel industry, though the underlying disagreements over border policy remain a significant flashpoint in Washington.
Moving to international trade news. In a surprising move following the state visit of King Charles and Queen Camilla, President Trump has announced he will remove all tariffs and restrictions on whiskey imports. The president stated that this decision was made specifically to honor the royal couple's visit to the United States. This change will lift restrictions on Scotland's ability to work with the state of Kentucky, particularly regarding the trade of whiskey and bourbon. The UK government has confirmed that this policy shift applies to all whiskey tariffs, including those on Irish whiskey. For years, the Scotch industry has been a major customer for Kentucky's used bourbon barrels, importing around £200 million worth annually. Trump noted that the King and Queen managed to get him to do something that nobody else could, and he expressed great respect for the royal couple as they departed.
The reaction from the industry has been overwhelmingly positive, with distillers saying they can finally breathe a little easier after a period of intense economic pressure. Scotland's First Minister John Swinney called the news tremendous, noting that millions of pounds were being lost every month from the Scottish economy due to these trade barriers. He credited the king for playing a key role in this diplomatic success. Buckingham Palace also released a statement expressing the king's sincere gratitude, even mentioning that he would be raising a dram to the president's thoughtfulness. Both the Scottish and UK governments had been lobbying for the removal of the 10% tariff rate for some time, arguing it would benefit distillers on both sides of the Atlantic. This move marks a significant moment of economic cooperation between the two nations.
Next, a shift in Maine. Maine Governor Janet Mills has officially suspended her campaign for the U.S. Senate, a move that has sent shockwaves through the Democratic Party. Mills was heavily recruited by Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and had significant establishment backing, but she struggled to gain momentum after entering the race late last October. By the time she launched her bid, her primary opponent, Graham Plattner, had already built a substantial lead in fundraising and polling. Plattner has emerged as a breakout progressive star, and with Mills out of the race, he is now the likely nominee to face Republican incumbent Susan Collins this fall. Mills reportedly stopped running ads in mid-April, leading to widespread speculation about the viability of her campaign. Her exit simplifies the primary, but leaves Democrats with a very different kind of candidate in a high-stakes race.
Graham Plattner reacted to the news with grace, thanking Governor Mills for her decades of public service during a recent rally. He emphasized that his campaign is about a movement of working people rather than just one individual. Meanwhile, Senator Susan Collins released a brief statement acknowledging the difficulty of the decision to drop out, and also thanking Mills for her service. Collins has held her seat since the late 90s and is known for her moderate stance, but she will now have to pivot her strategy to face a more progressive challenger. This race is seen as critical for Democrats if they hope to gain a majority in the Senate. With Mills stepping aside, the focus shifts entirely to whether Plattner's progressive message can resonate with a broad enough segment of the Maine electorate to unseat a long-term incumbent.
Now to a nomination update. President Trump has pulled the nomination of Dr. Casey Means for Surgeon General and has instead named Dr. Nicole Safier for the role. Dr. Means' path to confirmation had stalled in the Senate due to intense questioning regarding her lack of experience and her controversial stance on vaccines. During her confirmation hearings, Means faced a difficult time explaining why she did not finish her surgical residency and why she currently lacks an active medical license. She was also grilled about her ties to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his efforts to pull back vaccine recommendations. Means described her withdrawal as the result of a year-long smear campaign intended to undermine the movement focused on reforming food and healthcare. Despite her exit, she vowed to continue supporting the movement's goals of addressing chronic disease through lifestyle and diet changes.
The new nominee, Dr. Nicole Safier, is a radiologist and former Fox News contributor whom Trump described as a star physician. Safier is well known for her work guiding women through breast cancer treatment, and her nomination has already received praise from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. However, Safier has not always been in total agreement with the president. She previously criticized some of his comments on health policy, specifically calling his cautions about pregnant women taking Tylenol patronizing. This suggests she may bring a more independent voice to the role of the nation's doctor. The shift in nominees reflects the administration's attempt to find a candidate who can navigate the Senate's concerns while still aligning with the broader health reform goals of the administration. It remains to be seen how quickly the Senate will move on Safier's confirmation.
Turning to Louisiana's elections. Louisiana has taken the drastic step of suspending its upcoming U.S. House primaries following a major ruling from the Supreme Court. The court declared the state's current congressional map to be an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. Governor Jeff Landry issued an executive order to halt the House races, stating that allowing elections to proceed under an illegal map would undermine the integrity of the voting system. While the House races are on hold, other primaries, including the race for the U.S. Senate, will proceed as scheduled with early voting starting this weekend. The ruling specifically targeted a district that is currently held by a Democrat and is predominantly black. This decision is expected to force the Republican-led legislature to redraw the map, which could result in the elimination of at least one Democratic seat before the midterm elections later this year.
Secretary of State Nancy Landry has clarified that while the U.S. House races will still appear on the physical ballots because they have already been printed and sent out, any votes cast in those specific races will not be counted. Notices are being posted at early voting sites to alert the public of this last-minute change. This situation creates a significant amount of uncertainty for both candidates and voters, as it is currently unclear when the House races will actually take place. The Supreme Court's ruling is seen as a move that weakens protections against racial discrimination in redistricting, and it gives the Louisiana legislature the task of creating a new map that meets constitutional standards. This legal battle is part of a larger national trend of challenges to congressional boundaries that could shift the balance of power in Washington.
Finally, the DHS reopening. The House of Representatives has finally voted to reopen most of the Department of Homeland Security, bringing an end to the longest agency shutdown in the history of the United States. The 76-day standoff concluded with a voice vote on a bill that funds the majority of the department but leaves out specific funding for ICE and CBP. This piecemeal approach was a major point of contention for months. Democrats had initially blocked the funding to push for reforms like body-worn cameras after controversial police shootings in Minnesota. On the other side, many House Republicans were hesitant to negotiate or fund the agency in parts. Speaker Mike Johnson, who had previously called the Senate's version of this bill a joke, eventually reversed course to allow the vote. He credited patience and prayer for bringing the different factions together to finally resolve the crisis.
The situation had become dire, with Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin warning that the agency was completely out of emergency funds and had no way to pay staff by the end of the month. The shutdown had forced the agency to rely on dwindling appropriated funds, creating a massive strain on national security operations. To satisfy hardline members of his party, Speaker Johnson waited until the Senate began a procedural process called reconciliation, which aims to fund the remaining parts of the DHS for the rest of the term, without Democratic support. This move allowed the immediate reopening of essential services while keeping the fight over immigration enforcement alive. For now, the focus is on getting the department back to full operational capacity and ensuring that federal employees who have been working through the shutdown finally receive their back pay.
That concludes our briefing for today. Thank you for joining us for these updates. Follow this show for your next daily briefing on the stories that matter most.